car we have.
Hey people, it's Monday, January the 4th. It's 12:45 in the afternoon. And it's about 0 degrees Celsius. I'm walking west on Bloor Street West. Just coming into the Annex neighborhood. And I thought I'd walk up to what used to be Honest Ed's at the corner of Bloor and Bathurst. And we'll take a look at what's become of the former famous discount store that stood there for decades. It's being redeveloped into a new residential community of rental apartment buildings with retail on the ground floor. And the former Mervish village is also being retained, and it will be brought back as a pedestrian street. I'd like to point this out, this apartment building we're just walking past. It used to be known as Rochdale College. It was built in the late 1960s, and it was an experimental school as part of the University of Toronto, where they had a sort of unstructured learning environment. No classes or traditional professors. Everyone lived in a communal, shared environment. It was definitely at the peak of the hippie movement, which was big in Toronto in the late 60s. And eventually it just sort of deteriorated into like a drug-fueled free-for-all. And it lasted until the early 70s, I think, and then it, maybe the mid-70s, and then it went defunct. It's a pretty fascinating story, really. It was definitely one of the more radical things that were happening in the late 60s. We're just coming up on Spadina Road. Further south, it's known as Spadina Avenue. Mainly where it passes through Chinatown. Just look north. And you can see the top of the CN Tower shrouded in fog.
Okay. Happy New Year.
Thanks. It's been a while since I've walked along this part of Bloor Street. We're pretty much in the commercial heart of the Annex neighborhood right now. This is definitely one of the most popular and vibrant parts of the city. Although right now, it's not very apparent, given the lockdown measures that are in place. There's BMV Books. This is an awesome used bookstore. And that used to be my favorite sushi place, Big Sushi. It went under a while ago, not related to the pandemic that happened beforehand. Looking into the residential neighborhoods in the Annex. I did a walk around the residences in one of my videos from a few months back. What the heck? Hitting somebody's car is definitely not a good idea. Some people are very, very touchy about...
Come here, little boy. Some people are what? Some people have small dicks too.
That guy is definitely unhinged.
I mean, I feel like I deserve it.
I was saying, touching someone's car, you never know how they're going to react. Some of them treat their cars like they're children. There's Lee's Palace. It's a pretty famous live music venue. I think it was featured pretty prominently in the Scott Pilgrim comic book series. I don't know if any of you read that, but it's a pretty entertaining comic book series that was based here in Toronto. And now that I mention it, or now that I think of it, I should say, Honest Ed's was also featured in that comic book series. This used to be Sonic Boom Records, which, yes, you guessed it, was also featured in the Scott Pilgrim comic books. But apparently the landlord raised the rents to such an extent that they had to relocate, and they're now located on Spadina Avenue, just on the southern end of Chinatown. And here we go. So this is where Honest Ed's used to be. As you can see, it was a huge store that took up this entire lot pretty much. Flanked on all sides by garish flashing signs. The stuff they sold inside was, you know, pretty cheap, generic merchandise. But for a lot of people, it was the most affordable place to go. And even though I wasn't a regular shopper, I did go in and look around a few times like anybody who lives in Toronto would do. And it was definitely fun and interesting. Kind of like a throwback to another era. And when I heard it was closing and going to be redeveloped, I was pretty saddened by that. I remember I went in and walked around near the end and took some photos. And then they were giving away all the signage inside the store, and my sister got me one of the signs in the famous Honest Ed font. So I have that as a memento. So there's a lot of cranes here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I didn't get any of these cranes in my recent crane counting walks. Because this is just a little bit beyond the core of downtown, which is where I confine those walks to. Once you cross Bathurst Street, you're officially out of downtown Toronto. See, they retain some of the old storefronts that abutted Honest Ed's. This one here, and there's, I think, a couple more on the Bathurst Street side. And this is looking down Markham Street where Mirvish Village used to be, which is just a street of old historic homes that were converted into art galleries and cool shops selling like comic books and videos, and there was an awesome used video store here. I think it was called Suspect Video. And there was like a really good bar that I think has relocated. So all the old houses are being retained, as you can see. They're all wrapped up in tarp right now, but eventually Markham Street will be brought back to being like hopefully a street of interesting retail again and not just corporate chain retail. And it will be fully pedestrianized, whereas before it wasn't. So that's an improvement in that sense. Mirvish Village was named after the founder of Honest Ed's, Ed Mirvish. So hopefully it'll be really cool. The buildings are rental buildings, which, you know, is something people have a hard time complaining about. Everyone likes to complain about condos in Toronto taking over, but purpose-built rentals are something the city needs. So I hope it turns out good. It looks pretty good in the renderings. They're retaining an interesting retail street front presence. Just a matter of like what goes in those retail spaces. Hopefully it's something that fits in with the rest of the neighborhood. We'll just continue walking west here along Bloor through the remainder of the Annex. And actually now we're entering Koreatown. So no more Annex. Koreatown now. Just like that. I did a recent walk through North York Centre along Yonge Street, otherwise known as Old Willowdale, where I mentioned that area as being another Koreatown for that part of the city. And then I mentioned this Koreatown being the main old Koreatown, that more well-known one. I can see Jimi Hendrix over there. There's the Poop Cafe. That's where you go and you get desserts that come in a little miniature toilets. Chocolatey looking desserts, obviously. And you eat them out of the little miniature toilet bowl. I wonder how they're faring. They're open, I saw. There's another abandoned office chair. Came across one of those in one of my recent Yonge Street nighttime walks. And here we are at Christie Street and Grace Street on the south side. And this is where Koreatown ends. Just like that. It ends as suddenly as it began. There's Christie Pitts Park across the street. So I think I'll wrap up this walk along Bloor Street West through the Annex, past the former Honest Ed's site, and through Koreatown. So I hope you enjoyed this walk. If you did, please, by all means, subscribe, like, share, comment, tell your friends and family and your worst enemies even. Don't forget to hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of my videos. I've been posting daily lately. And if you'd like to support my channel, there's a link in the description where you can do so via PayPal. So thanks for watching, and don't forget to keep checking back because, as always, I will continue.